If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randall. Let's dive in.
All right, welcome back. It's awesome to have you on today. I have some awesome guests today, Jen and Stacy Conkey. They are living in Florida, but they invest all over the country. They have 4 different companies that we discuss, and one is multifamily investing all around the country. One is a capital raising company deploying that capital into other operators' deals. Another one is their academy where they teach people how to do exactly what they do all around the country. And then they have a mindset company. Super interesting conversation. Wherever you're listening to this, if you would go on rate and review, helps me out a ton whenever we're putting content out so that it reaches more people and we're able to bring on awesome guests. If you can, just a 1-word review even helps more than just the stars. So do that, and I appreciate it. And let's jump into the show right now. Do you guys know the Sean Ryan podcast by chance?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I was listening to his show the other day, and he's a ex-special forces guy, and he's got guests that come on who are like CIA, this and that. One of the guys he brought on was a guy who specializes in out-of-body experiences from the CIA, and the whole idea is he can put himself into a situation, find out where people are in the world, find CIA, like very crazy. I'm like, I don't know. This sounds some kind of 4chan sort of story or something. I don't know. It was like something else. And then I know a few guys in Air Force intelligence and some other things. And I started talking to him about it. I was like, this is nuts. And he's like, you have no idea. So people use this. The reason I'm bringing it up right now is because the CIA guy talks about the 70s and 80s and how they were bringing people into the group. And one of the people that he brought in that learned this method was Tony Robbins. I was like, okay. And now we're talking NLP, and I know he's big into that. So I was like, how does this connect? Anyway, I'm trying to put all the pieces together, solve the world's problems through this.
That's why. What is the name of that podcast?
I want to go watch it. Yeah, I want to go watch it, listen to it, whatever it is.
I've never heard of that.
That sounds bad. I've heard really cool stories about Tony and his early career with NLP, because he doesn't do NLP anymore. He does neuro-associative conditioning. Okay. But in his early career, I love listening to some of those stories. Like he was negotiating a military contract. Yeah. And Tony's thing is always anchoring. Like when he's doing this, he's doing his thing. Like that's an anchoring. It's a volume. Okay. It's called a sliding anchor. So he's increasing the intensity of the emotion, and the clap is the finality of it. And that means take a seat. But he's just a master at anchoring. And so when he was negotiating this contract, it was a military contract. He recognized very quickly that everybody in the room, all of the colonels in the room, would adjust and like sit up straight anytime he got close to the general's chair. So he started anchoring the general's chair. And when it came time to pitching the contract, and after he'd already got him to say yes to 6 other things, he just went over to the general's chair and put his hand on it, and he sealed it.
That's wild.
He anchored the chair. It's really crazy. I love studying him. Tony's my favorite influencers. Like he's amazing.
So I have not studied it, and that's why I'm curious about it. Like in sales in general, it is wild. All the things you just said, anchoring and then getting to the close and then getting people to sit up, the way you get them to say yes multiple times before you close them, all of those things. But in depth, like I've never gotten past that. It's almost like somebody else has studied it, and that is the sales technique. And so those techniques are the ones I've learned. But in general, those details of how they do it, it's fascinating.
So interesting.
All they're really doing is distracting your conscious mind and getting beyond it, because your unconscious mind processes like 10 million bits or something per second, and your conscious mind only does 126. So they distract the conscious mind, and your unconscious mind just understands the assignment. So it's really fascinating. I love that stuff. What was the name of the podcast again?
The Sean Ryan Show. I'm on Spotify for his, but I don't know if that's matters. But his was Show 95 is the one I'm talking about.
That's cool.
And it's CIA's Project Stargate, former U.S. Remote viewing.
Listen to that.
You listen to it, and then so my grandma is currently, I don't want to get heavy, but she's on hospice right now, and so I'm sitting here talking to my mom, and we're having all these conversations, and listening to this guy's explanation of what happens when you die was fascinating. Because he's in the Vietnam War and he has this out-of-body experience because he almost dies. And then he talks about how they harness that out-of-body experience to go and be in these remote locations to view. So somebody will give him a file that he doesn't open it, doesn't do anything. And somehow he's able to get into this. They train the brain to be able to get into and see what's in there. So it's like psychic slash. So anyway, his whole explanation was fascinating. And so that's show 95. And then the next one was pretty good. And then Rick Doblin, I don't know if you guys like, he talks about MDMA and and psychotropics and all the things that they're using that for. So anyway, he's maybe number 2 show, I think, right now on Spotify after Rogan.
Wow.
So he has some interesting guests and shows on. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Right on.
That was talk about everything
way
today.
to get into rapport.
Yeah. Why don't we kick it off and start and really talk multifamily first? Because I'm curious how your business is structured right now. You guys have been investing all over the United States. And so why don't you break down what that looks like, how you've managed those properties and projects in diverse array of markets. So where are you guys now? What are you working on?
We're on pause for acquisitions, although there's a mobile home project.
All right, let's talk mobile home parks.
So we have value-add mobile home project that we're looking at with an expert operator, and we're looking at raising capital for that deal. So that was what was probably going to be on the horizon. We were trying to take a couple months off, but in the last year, we did a 96 unit that we did as a syndication and a 48 unit that we did as a syndication that closed 3 days before the end of the year, right before the end. And then we closed a 13 unit with 20 storage units just after the first of the year. So the 48 unit was a syndication because it was like a $2.2 million raise. Yep. But the 13 unit with the 20 storage units was just a joint venture that we did with one other person because we only needed $270,000 to raise for that one, as opposed to 2.2 million. So we do both, but those are the 3 projects we did last year on top of already managing the rest of our portfolio, running our academy, running our kids, Jen's mindset, alt work, all those things. Yeah. There's not enough hours in the day is what we've discovered for all the things we want to do.
Okay. So to that point, then how do you manage all of the moving parts and where are those assets? Because you guys are located where, and then where are the assets?
We are in Florida, Orlando area, and the 96 unit is in Kentucky. The 48 unit is in St. Louis, a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And then the 13 unit is in Indiana, about an hour and a half north of Indianapolis. Okay. So they're in different markets.
Yeah. How do you like the Indiana market? Because I've been traveling up there quite a bit, and my in-laws
favorite. Yeah. Since 2017, favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place up there. They live in Carmel, which is just north of the city. Oh, yeah. Carmel's and nice. So I looked there, and then I looked even further, I would say east. There's another small town out there that I looked at. Okay. So again, how are you managing those from afar? Were you the leads on it, or are you raising capital for those deals, or how were they structured?
I just want to chunk this up and then I'll hand it back over to her. So I think that your listeners will probably appreciate a little bit of chunkery.
Chunk it up.
We have 3 businesses right now, actually 4. Right. So the one is we started over 20 years ago where we have our own portfolio where we acquire and operate our own door count. Like it's our own deals that we found, we've got it. It's all ours. Yep. Oh, we have partners and stuff that we raise money for. So we have our own portfolio of real estate. Then we have our capital company where we raise capital for other operators that we have vetted, we know, and they're really good. And we do that for various reasons. Now, 3 of those deals last year, we're just at a different place now. We've been doing this for 20 years. So our original portfolio, we no longer go acquire things for ourselves. They just come to us because we've built a pipeline of all kinds of brokers that will give us, hey, look at this off-market deal because we've just developed that relationship. Sure. So we don't really go out looking for deals anymore. They come to us because we spent the time building that pipeline. Now, the capital company, we will raise for other people's deals. We also have an academy where we teach people how to do exactly how we do what we do to get our 2,500 doors. In that academy, those people are in there for 3 years. They become like veterans. They become one of us. And they're the ones that will bring us deals that will fall on our lap and we'll be like, oh my God, I got to be a part of this deal. And we'll be a part of the GP. We will even raise capital for those deals as long as it's 506C, accredited investors going forward. We have all these systems in place that make it very easy for us to do this. So when we started the Academy 5 years ago, my vision was I wanted a community. I wanted to build a community, the community that I didn't have when I was going through it for 12 years alone. So I wanted to build a community. And I also wanted to build, very similar to MLB, a farming system. So I am teaching, training, developing, and cloning us. Yep. So that I know, and I'm watching them for that first year. We're watching them very closely. Are they following the system? Are they taking shortcuts? If they make a mistake, how do they respond? If something's not going right, what's their emotional quotient about that? How are they handling adversity? How are they handling these conversations within? And then we identify who's like the elite, the best of the best. And then we make them an offer to stay in for years 2 and 3, where we can now start looking at doing deals and coaching them at a different level. Now, our academy focuses on the first step is joint venture. You come in, you do joint venture, no syndication yet, starting small on a 5, 10 unit, and then stair stepping so that you actually know how to manage that asset. We're very strong believers in that because, well, that's just how you build it. It's not overnight. Then in years 2 and 3, we teach them how to syndicate. By year 3, we're doing syndications with them. So we have this whole system in place where we don't really have to go out and look for deals anymore. They just come to us. And then the fourth business that we have is a mindset business, which we also do mindset in the academy. And mindset it goes along with our capital raising company too, because you have to have the right mindset. You have to know how to get into rapport with people and nurture relationships. And it applies to 80% of what we do in business. So now that I've given that context, I think that it's in a better place for Stacy to just explain our system and why our system it's awesome. I might be a little biased, but it is awesome how we remotely do it. And the fact that it grew so big that we then developed an academy to teach people how to do it. And now we've got this whole system. And then we developed a capital company. So it was like our own portfolio, then the academy, then the capital company. And then now we're launching a full-on mindset company. So
yeah, that was a great recap. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Jen and I work so perfectly together. We are for sure the yin and yang.
Yeah.
Because Jen is like high level strategy. She sees the whole picture and I'm like in the weeds. Give me an Excel spreadsheet on a Friday night. I am good. Let's go.
We have an inside joke, an NLP joke at the house. If I look at her and go, that doesn't mean you're doing okay. It means chunk up the details. And then she's looking at me like, come down to earth. So it's just, we do this a lot.
Yeah.
So we have very complementary attribute skills.
I love it. I'm going to start using chunk up now whenever I'm having conversations like that.
Yeah. That was actually really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
We were way too far down.
I really don't know how to do that.
Yeah. We were like 5 feet off the ground and all the listeners are probably like, what do they even do? Who are these chicks?
Yeah. You mentioned something there before we jump in, Stacy. You mentioned something that you're an advocate for starting small, building, learning from there. So there are other programs that are not, they don't advocate that. Let's go 150 or bigger, go hit a home run on your first deal. Good luck. You can manage this. You're going to get it. Rock star. So did you guys go through that experience? Okay. So what happened and what led you to this go small, learn the actual business?
So in our own personal journey, that is what we did. We did start small and we just learned to ascend and scale. And there's so much that you learn in multifamily, just the entire process from A to Z that can be learned on a 5 unit or a 20 unit or a 100 unit. The problem, and this was not a problem for us. This more came when we started educating and realizing that literally it felt like every other education company out there was pushing start with syndication. When we learned about syndication, which was what, 2016?
It was because I had that harebrained idea. Let's go bigger for the acquisition fees.
Yeah. So when we we're like, okay, cool. Let's learn about syndication. And we already had a lot of experience. We're like, oh my God, this will be so easy. And it was anything but easy. It is not easy to do syndication. And what I realized at that point was, you know what, there's no reason we can't merge the whole fees structure of the syndication with our current joint venture structure. So we started just doing that, where we would do a joint venture, but we would build in the fees and we would underwrite the deal that way. So we were like, cool, we get the best of both worlds. I have been educating investors for, I don't know, over 15 years. It's my passion. I love to teach and I love to coach people so that they don't have to go through the same pain that I did. That's like my big driver. And what I see is that when someone wants to get started, the learning curve is huge. There's an enormous learning curve when it comes to getting into apartments. There's lots of places to stub your toe, to lose lots of money. In real estate in general, there's a learning curve. Apartments, when you make a mistake, it's not necessarily just a 5-figure mistake. It's super easy to make a 6-figure and 7-figure mistake. So the position I've always taken with people, we say this publicly, and I'm sure that we are not popular and that we're probably on some people's like dartboard because of it.
Yeah, one movie, Con Air, how he has like a list. You know? we're on someone's list.
We're on the list because we will very publicly say, you absolutely should not start with syndication. There's nothing more dangerous that you're going to do for yourself or your investors. And here's why. And I know part of us saying that is to get people's attention, but we really do believe it, Randall. And here's the deal. When you start and your first deal is, let's say 100 units. First of all, that's very difficult to take across the finish line because you're not going to get financing on your own. You're going to have to get a sponsor. no one takes you seriously yet because you've never even done a deal. If you somehow manage to do it and take that deal across the finish line, and now you're going through your learning curve as an operator with all these other people's money, and you've never done a deal before, and you're going through those little mistakes that you tend to make when you're new, but you're doing it to the tune of $10 million asset, it's very easy to wipe out people's retirements by doing that. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's just the truth. When you're doing your first deal, even if it's a 10 unit, you're going to do things and be like, oh, okay. Oh, now I see why they said to do this. Okay, good to know for the future. But it's fine. You did it on a little building. You're becoming an expert at what this is to own, operate. And I don't mean operate as in you're on site, to operate the asset, to manage the asset. And once you learn that, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't so hard. Let me go up to 25 or 30 units and learn it at a little bit bigger level. Okay, I got that down. Now I have more experience. Let me go just a little bit bigger. So the whole thing that we say is do 3 deals, 3 smaller apartment deals that kind of stair step up. Because by the end of that, you are so ready for syndication, because all that is at that point is just more units, but learning a new financing mechanism with the SEC rules and regulations. But when someone's brand new, if you pile on all of that, all the syndication stuff on top of all of the other things you have to learn, it's very rare that we ever meet anyone who's been able to take a deal across the finish table as a syndication for their first deal. Just people come to our academy like, I've been trying to get into this for years. And then what we find out is they were taught start with syndication and they still haven't done a deal.
Yeah.
Whereas we have PF people come in and they'll do their first 10 unit deal in the first 4 to 6 months. And then they start going really fast because they have credibility, they have experience. And that's why I go there. We care about people. We want them to be successful. And we feel like doing a stair step approach is so much better for them long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in the last maybe 7 years, if you got started in it as a first time operator and going out and syndicating funds, it may have been a little bit easier to raise capital, easier to maybe find deals. But recently, a new operator going after a 150 unit deal just seems irresponsible if you're raising capital and bringing in people's cash. That now a lot of it seems to be getting wiped out or has the potential of getting wiped out. Anyway, I just want to touch on that since you guys have talked. Now that we've got Debbie Downer out of the way, sorry about that, guys. Like, that is.
It's not even Debbie Downer, really. It's just, we just want to help people succeed.
Yeah. No, not on your part, my part. I'm like, sorry, there's some equity going to get wiped off.
Oh, okay.
That's the reality of,
that is a reality.
What's happening. Okay. So why don't we get back into then talking about how you guys are able to manage these deals now that we have the high chunk, high level, right? Where we are, what you guys are working on. How are you able to manage these deals on just the asset side? How have you structured them? What are your joint venture partners? Just give me a few. And if you have, what'd you say, 2,500 doors? Is that what you guys are working on right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, how are you guys structured to be able to manage those doors if they're not in your backyard?
That's the best part, is that we get that question all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because of the systems that we have in place to do this remotely. That's our academy is called the Remote Multifamily Investing Academy. And until last year, we didn't even step foot in any of them. We have boots on the ground teams that for example, when you asked us what our favorite market was earlier, and we said Indiana, when we went into Indiana, it was 2017. And at that time, it wasn't a big thing yet. Like, it was on the verge of gentrification and there was a lot of opportunity there. We like to go into a market with just one property and test the market before we go deep. So if we go in and we build that team, and that team's capacity and bandwidth and their bench strength is strong, we'd like to have 3 different on the bench for whether it's HVAC or contractors or plumbing. We like them to have a deep bench. So when we go into that market and we're getting with that team and we're getting a realtor in place, a broker in place, an inspector in place, all of those things, we're testing that market, we're testing their capabilities, and we're looking at one asset, and as it performs, then we'll go deeper and we'll go bigger. And so we've been in Indianapolis and Indiana as a general since 2017. Like, it's going on 8 years. It's our favorite.
Yeah.
And that team that we have there, because of where we go, we're very selective. Once we're in the market, nothing distracts us. I can't tell you if, like, from 2020 until, I don't know, yesterday, I have people that will say, hey, are you open to this deal? Hey, are you open to this deal? And I'm like, I'm not really in that market. We test our market because we have a lot of investors in our database. We don't want to risk anyone's money. We got to know. So we have a specific methodology to go into the market, test it with one deal, then do a second one, go deeper. And this team that we've put together, we're really just making sure, because the team, they form, they storm, they norm, they perform, they do all those things, right? It's like you have to make sure that's what's happening. And you also have to have a third party, like we have an inspector that's not related to anybody else on the team and doesn't even come to the property unless nobody else is there. So nobody even knows who this guy is in each little market, where we'll have him go inspect and send us stuff. There's all kinds of digital assets like your phone. There's Marco Polo, there's FaceTime, there's Duo, there's all these things where you can be there without having to be there. So we just leverage technology, we leverage relationships, and we have a very profound system where that team is in place. And then we just continue going into that market deeper. So right now, what's 4 markets? Did we have a couple in Texas? Because we already talked about 3.
Yeah.
We're in Texas.
No, and Dayton. We have
yeah, that's
Ohio.
right. We have it in Ohio too. So it's 5 or 6 markets, right? And that's it. We're just densely in those markets.
Yeah.
And we prefer to be in the Rust Belt, like in the Midwest, where our money goes further.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much where it's value add. It's like a lot of value add markets. So in 2020, all the way up until, actually from 2018, all the way up until 6 months ago, or when interest rates started going up and the floating rate started becoming an issue, people would always say, hold on a second, why are you investing there? You're supposed to be like a big player. Why aren't you in Texas? Why aren't you in Phoenix? Why aren't you in Florida? Why aren't you in all these high transaction markets? And it's because we don't want to go get the wrong financing in order to secure an asset. That's why. So we're focused on here. So when everybody else is bum rushing these high transaction areas and they're trying to get the financing to meet it, once that financing adjusts, you've lost it. And now you're in the red and it's hard. So for us, our strategy always seems to be flip-flop from whatever the herd is doing. So we're not really herd followers. We're more like nerds. We actually identify as geeks about it. Like we're going to find those markets. So now we're not doing value adds. Now is not the time to do a value add. Now is the time to do stabilized cash flow on day one, get a momentum, book a win, do that and get it going versus doing the value add. But now everybody's swapping to value adds. And I'm like, you don't understand the assignment. So for us, we have got a lot of people just scoffing at us over the years, especially the last 3 or 4 years, that why aren't you in there? Why are students over here? And even our students would say, oh, but this is a hot market. I'm like, by the time it's hot, it's too late. You need to get in an emerging market. You need to get in one that's on the cusp that you can grow into. So we just have a different way of thinking. And a lot of people think we're crazy because remotely we manage that team. And of all of our properties, we meet with only the property manager and it's their job to manage the asset.
Yeah.
We review the reports. We know what's going on. We ask the questions and we monitor that. And it's either a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, or if it's been performing for a long time, a quarterly meeting. And then we have to review that market at least every 6 months, especially lately, especially since COVID. Reviewing the market, what's going on? When can we refi? Not now. Okay, how long should we hold it? What does it look like? What do market rents look like? We just have systems in place to do that. And the reason why we have that is because we stepped into it. We didn't go straight for 100 unit. We know how to manage it. So now we know what questions to ask and we can scale faster. I talked to some folks that they started 3 or 4 years ago and they have 1,400 doors right now. And I'm like, that's awesome. And they're like, I'm almost on to you. And I'm like, you need to slow down because you don't know what you're doing and you're not going in a way that's scalable. So they're afraid to leave their backyard because they feel like they have this illusion of control, but you really don't. And Stacy has the best explanation of this. It's you think you have control, but you don't. And I was one of those people until I met Stacy. I thought, I got to be there. I got to smell it. I got to touch it. I got to sniff it. I got to do all the things because I can make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But the truth is, I don't know what contractors look at. I don't know if the HVAC was installed right. I don't know if the tucking on the roof is right. I don't know if the flooring was done right. I don't know anything, but the contractors and inspectors do if they're certified. So she has a really good system for that. And that's how we do it. It's very simple, but yet not easy, but it's systemized.
Yeah. The system.
That's a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's solid. That's great. That's again, driving at how you guys are doing it so that if somebody's looking to do it, and again, we have agents that are listening that if they want to get into this asset class, it's a lot more than simply just going out and just buying one. You can, but yeah, there's systems that are already established and in place, and you obviously have established those and set those up. So let's talk a little bit about just staying on the multifamily for another second here. Even not, I don't know. I want to talk about this RV park that you guys were looking at and jumping into, but I was listening to some of what you guys talk about, and joint ventures are a big part of it, correct? Can you discuss joint ventures and how they differ from your syndications? You mentioned it a minute ago. One was a lower capital raise or capital requirements, so you're using your funds and you don't necessarily need to jump through all the hoops of a syndication. I assume that's part of it. But how do you leverage joint ventures in your transactions?
So I'll give you an example of the one that we just closed January 8th. That was Indiana. It was a 13 unit with 20 storage units, like on the same site. It was done with seller financing. What do we put down? 25%?
Yeah.
So 25% down, sellers carrying it at 5% interest on a 30-year amortization for 7 years, right? So I think it was when interest rates would have been 7, we got it for 5. So that was just great. And it was seller financing. So that was all that coolness of the deal. One of our business partners found that deal. Like in our team, we have people who are like experts at acquisition. We've taught them and trained them, but now we don't have to spend the time. So someone on our team went and found that deal. We conducted the due diligence, went through everything. And we were like, okay, this is not going to be a big raise for this. How much is it? So we crunched the numbers. It was okay, $270,000. There's other people that we've known for a long time that have expressed that I'd love to do a deal with you someday. But sometimes the entry point is too high for them. One of those people happened to sell a business fairly recently and was like, we want to invest with you. So we just contacted them. Part of it too is really understanding and knowing the people that you're building money relationships with. So I knew like they're heading into retirement years. So doing value add wasn't a really big appeal for them. They want to keep their money at work. So doing like where you're turning your money over 3 years, that wasn't appealing to them. So I was like, well, this is going to be at least a 7-year hold, if not longer. It's a cash flow market, not a value market. So I think they're going to be the right partner. Also, they're obviously willing to be active to the extent that you have to be for the joint venture. But other than that, they're like, you can handle all the heavy lifting. Let's go ahead. And that's our preference, just so that we can, operate it. Yeah. But that was really, so how do we leverage joint venture partners? We have a couple, like one was someone from our team. We own the company together, but I'd say that's part of our joint venture partnership. They're handling that. We have another person on our team that focuses on the asset management. We can do all of it because we've done all of it over the years. But what we've found is that the capital part has ended up being a really natural place for us. We're really good at building relationships. We're really good at caring about what people really want and need. Yeah. And then finding opportunities that match those up so that we can serve them. And obviously it serves us too. But our money partners in this case came in, they're ecstatic because now they're part of a great deal. The returns were crazy high on it as far as cash flow.
Yeah.
It's just a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, so right now you focus more on cash flow. It sounded like that's what you were talking about, Jen, right now. Yes. So you want a coupon, you want something performing already there.
Yeah, we prefer a unicorn hybrid-ish.
Yeah,
it's hard to explain, but
we weren't planning on doing
it. My daughter loves unicorns. I don't know.
Who doesn't?
They're fabulous.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
When the interest rates started going up, because we were big on that. I love value add. There's nothing more that I love in life than value add. It's so fun. However, once the interest rate started going up, and we would go into deals where there was no cash flow for the first year, but we're like, who cares? We're going to make so much money on the back end that it doesn't matter. We went through 2008. So we have a level of wisdom and some scars that really have served us now that we're going through this time. So as soon as things shifted, we immediately shifted our strategy from value add to, okay, it has to be cash flowing when we close. We never had that requirement previously, but now it has to cash flow when it closes because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know how much of an impact the interest rate increase is going to have on the capital markets, on the valuations of the property. And so because of that, we were just, we still want to do value add deals, but it has to be stabilized with value add opportunities. And that way, if we can't pull off the value add that we're assuming because cap rates start going up because we just didn't know. And then turns out interest rates went nuts. Yeah. We did not anticipate them going that high that fast.
I don't think anybody did.
Yeah. So we were especially glad that we made that adjustment when we did, because even though the valuation of some of the properties has gone down because cap rates went up with the interest rates, the deal's still cash flow. So honestly, it doesn't even matter right now. It only matters when we're done with financing and we're forced to either sell or refinance. Hopefully interest rates will have calmed down by then. and we'll be in the great position that we plan on being in to exit the asset. But that's what it is. So ideally, every deal we do is stabilized, but also has a value add upside. We don't do anything that is just stabilized. It has to have some kind of upside also, but the stabilization or the stabilized part is our primary focus to make sure that if it never goes up in value, it's still a good return on investment.
Yeah. At getting seller finance terms 25% down 5 or 8, that's pretty solid. If you can get those all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I love the structure that you have. Education leads to deal flow from internal deal flow around the country, I would imagine. So the other thing I wanted to ask, last thing on the multifamily or on deal structuring front, when you're looking at joint venture compared to syndication, do you keep the terms relatively the same, or do you have is it deal by deal? You look at something like this one and you say, I know you guys are looking for a coupon. Here you go. This is what we're going to pay you. No upside, but you're getting this. What is it? Does that make sense? Like, how are you structuring your deals?
It is very deal specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on whether we're the ones doing like bringing the deal or whether we are joining a deal. So with the 96 unit, we joined that deal. 40 unit, we joined that deal. So the terms and everything were already established. But of course, there are people that are in our academy that we taught. So they've been with us for years. So they're pretty much doing it the same way that we did. But the terms are really going to be driven more by what's available in the deal, because you can't extract too much profit out of the deal as the operator if it doesn't leave your capital partners enough to make it compelling for them to join, because now nobody's doing any deal.
Sure.
So you always have to balance it. With the 48 unit, it ended up being an 80-20 split, which is lower than what we wanted. But that was what our operating team had to come up with, because at the time it went under contract in October, rates were at the max. So the only way it would work for all of the limited partners was if the GP only took 20%. And I was like, we like to be at 30% at least. But that's what it took. And of course, interest rates went down. So now our LPs were just made so much more money. So it's great. But on the 96 unit, it was a 28-72 split. Yeah. And on the 13 unit, it doesn't actually matter if it's JV or syndication. To us, that doesn't matter. And when we're doing the underwriting, we're just playing with the numbers to make sure how much do our partner, LP, whatever, how much do our money people get? And how much do we get? And is it worth it to us? And will it be worth it to them? And when we find that sweet spot, that's what we propose. So like on the 13 unit, we were able to do a 60-40, like 40% for us and 60% for our partner. And we didn't end up putting any money into that deal. We were able to invest in the 96 and the 48 as LPs and as GPs, because we didn't have to put any money into the 13 unit.
13 unit was just one.
It was just, it was just one.
The deal sounds awesome. I mean, I love the sound of that deal just in general. It's got storage, plus it's got the units. So I'm working on a 24 unit right now. So I'm like just hearing deals and how you guys are structuring. The other side of it then, what advice do you have? I have a whole 3 or 4 episodes on this, but what advice do you have having students and having invested with other sponsors and leads? For somebody, again, we got a real estate broker making $1 million a year. He's got excess cash flow. He's ready to invest this money. How does he find a sponsor? What would your advice be to them to vet a sponsor to put some capital to work with?
When you're saying sponsor, I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. You're talking about like the operator.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Whoever the lead sponsor is bringing the deal to the table and looking to raise capital.
How do they find them?
How do they find or vet them? Vetting is really the most important part.
It is
100%. On the finding, it really comes down to tapping into your networks. And especially if you're going to be investing in multifamily, getting involved in organizations or Facebook groups or whatever, that the focus is multifamily, and just start getting to know people and watch people, have conversations. The very first thing I always tell people is, like, when you meet with someone, you're going to get a vibe. Not that this is due diligence, it's not, but you're going to get a vibe for whether, are you a straight shooter or are we blowing smoke up someone's? Anyway, so if you don't feel like they are completely on the up and up, just immediately cut that off. Don't waste any time, because your unconscious mind knows so much. And so if you're like, I'm not sure, you're right. It's no good. Like, just move on. But in the actual vetting process, you're finding out what deals have they done? What size deals have they done? And how does that compare to the size of the deal that you're looking at with them? For example, if we're looking at a 250 unit deal, and the sponsor or the operator, because we've been LPs also on deals before. Yep. If the sponsor has done 50 and a 75 unit and an 83 unit, and now they're doing 252, we're like, I don't really know that you have the
construction. Yeah.
Exactly. So we like to see that they've taken a stair-step approach, because we do really believe that is where your knowledge and your experience and your value for that reason come from. So what has been their path? What deals have they taken to fruition? What is their philosophy? We had someone that we've done some deals with in the past recently brought us a 3-year deal. In the past, we love 3-year deals, but once interest rates changed, I was like, I'm not doing anything that's 3 years. I have no idea how quickly this is going to turn around. And that's too short for us. So their philosophy no longer worked with our philosophy. They were like, oh no, in 3 years, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't believe it's going to recover that quickly. So we're not okay with that anymore.
Yeah.
What else do we do when we're talking to them?
I think that a red flag for me personally is that you definitely want to look at that progressive track record. I like to ask questions about the deal. And if they can't riff off the numbers, they don't know the deal that well. And I will also ask questions on how many other deals are you actively operating or trying to rehab or trying to stabilize? How many projects are you managing right now? And I can't tell you how many times that's saved us, because it comes up, oh, we're working on 4 over here. We're doing this and this market, and they're just going so fast. And that's a big red flag for me, because if they're going that fast and they're not going slow enough, are they financing it right? Did they stress test the deal properly? Another thing, when you're looking at it in year 1, if the DSCR is below 1.5, 1.4 at most, I just wouldn't do it right now. That's just me, because there's just too many unknowns. So I would look at, how did they stress test that deal? What is the DSCR in year 1? What happens if vacancy is so high? What happens if vacancy is 25%? What if it's 40%? At what point will you no longer cash flow? What are your parameters? What's that bottom line where you're still going to cash flow as long as vacancy isn't too high? And then what does it look like from turnover? Just so many different red flags that if they don't know those details, then they might not be the one to talk to. It might be the guy who's capital raising or the girl who's capital raising, and they don't know enough about the underwriting process. So I would urge you and nudge you to find out who did the underwriting and how can I speak with them?
Yeah.
How can I look at the underwriting tool? How can I look at your assumptions, your projections, your pro forma? How can I look at the details? And I want to get down to a gnat's butt on what the numbers look like. What's the cap rate on exit? And how did you determine that? There's so many questions that before you hand over your hard-earned money, you need to really vet these folks and what their experience is, how they're approaching it. Is their risk tolerance the same as yours? Are your values the same as theirs? Because if you're talking a 5-year, 7-year deal, that's almost, some marriages don't last that long. So really know the person that you're about ready to invest with. And all these shiny IRR numbers and all these big returns, like, you've just got to look at it deeper and really scrutinize it. And it comes down to, how did they finance it? Will the rate ever float? That's a good question right now. Is this a floating rate debt? If it is, there a rate cap? When does it expire? What is that rate cap? Because everybody in 2020, 21, 22 got rate caps, but it was at 6.5%. It got higher than that. So we need to be prepared for those types of questions. And you need to know what to expect. And also asking questions like, when there's problems in the deal and what's the communication process look like? How will I know? How will I be made aware of those things? Like, in all actuality, what's the upside of this deal? But more importantly, what's the downside? Because I have to determine whether or not I can live with that downside. And can they articulate that downside? And can they articulate it in a way of, here's my ABC, all of my contingency plans to mitigate that downside? Or do they really not know? And are they speaking with certainty? Like, your subconscious mind, Stacy's right, it'll pick up. Yeah. Your sensory acuity will pick up on any little tick in the face that seems like it's uncertain. You need absolute certainty that they know what they're talking about. And then what they say, you need to go compare it to the numbers, the underwriting tool. That's just me, if I'm going to put at least 6 figures in a deal.
You're touching on something now that I want to transition into, which is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Okay, so talk to me. I don't know anything, because I don't, right, about NLP. And then tell me how much of that plays into conversations that you have with investors, with sellers, with students, with just in general. So we can't do an exhaustive program yet on this, but anyway, tell me what you can.
A couple high level things. NLP is everything in this business. It's everything in life, in all honesty. It's language. It's about linguistically communicating, but every single person on this planet has a preferred communication style. You either prefer visual, or you prefer auditory, or you prefer kinesthetic, or auditory digital. Like, you have these preferred ways where you like to receive information. I'm visual. And I'm also kinesthetic, but my primary is visual. If I can't see it, you lost me. Like you got to draw it out. You remember those old sketchy cartoons that would draw stuff? I would just be captivated. You have me the whole way, right?
Well, I
have whiteboards everywhere. Whiteboards are my best friend. And then there's the kinesthetic side that they speak a little bit slower and they're actually formulating their sentences as they're going, a lot of filler words. They might be a little bit more relaxed in their chair. They're a little bit more calm. Whereas a visual person's, hey, we're going to go, we're going to talk, we're going to do the things. Auditory digital will talk to themselves and answer themselves. And they're just like all over the place. They could be in another room and hear your conversation and then opine on it an hour later. And you'd be like, you weren't even in the room. They process information differently. The reason why I share that is between those three preferred communication styles, everybody gives clues as to what they prefer. So if you listen, somebody who's visual will say, hey, can you just show me the way so that I can see exactly what we're working with here? I just need to know your vision. That's a visual person. Or they might say something like, I hear you, and I need you to listen to what I'm going to say next. This is really important to me that you hear me out. That's obviously auditory. And then a kinesthetic person will say something like, I feel you, but I need to wrap my arms around this. I need to get it's got a concrete plan and you got to show me that. So they're feelers, right? So if you hear that, all you do, whether you're trying to pitch a deal, sell a house, or get your kids to do something, is match their predicate words and their body language. So last night we were talking to somebody on the phone, super kinesthetic guy, full of love and heart, all the things. And he's talking really slow. One of my unique superpowers is I will identify what they are right away. And I started talking just as slow. And Stacy was like this. She's like Judy Hopps on Zootopia. Let's go. Yeah, a 3-humped camel, got it, pregnant, woo! Like that's Stacy. But I will slow down whenever there's a kinesthetic person because that's how they prefer to be communicated with. And now I'm in rapport with them because I am being like them. So they're going to listen to me and I'm going to be able to understand them better because now I'm actually in that modality. I am with them. I am present. They feel like they're the only person in the world. And I'm speaking their language. Even if it takes 20 minutes when it could have taken 7, I'm there for it. And that's probably the biggest NLP tip that I can give you. Second one is people's faces tell you everything, except you have to determine what it is it's telling you. If you were to talk to Stacy and she started doing this, you might think she's mad. It's not true. After you get to know her, you realize that because she's auditory, she's thinking about what you're saying, but she's also visually distracted by what's going on. And she's got shiny squirrel syndrome. So she's really got to focus. And this is what her face does when it focuses. And our kids will be like, Mommy's mad at me. But it's not. It's just she's thinking. So you can learn somebody's facial expressions and what they mean. I played poker for years. So watching facial expressions, watching mannerisms, watching how they do their hands, how they do movements, what happens in their face if their lip gets really thin, if it gets tight, if their face like all of a sudden it shows up in like the smallest little increments. So when you're negotiating a deal and you happen to be face-to-face, which I never am, it's usually on the phone or a Zoom, but it's never like in person, face-to-face. If you are one of those people that you're face-to-face, like if you're a realtor and that their facial expression is they're not very interested, they're not engaged, tune into their predicate words. Mm-hmm. Watch their body language. Are they breathing from the chest? Are they breathing from the belly? Are they sitting up straight? Are they in a freaking hurry? Match them. Step into their energy, meet them where they are, and now you'll get them engaged. And then you can have a meaningful conversation. Those are probably the biggest ways that it impacts our business, our life, our house, everything. We just tune in to what the preferred communication style is and adapt because it's really just a matter of responsiveness. And the person who's the most flexible is going to get the most out of conversation. So in my opinion, NLP is like the best thing you can do in your life. Just go learn how to speak the language of everybody.
I'm now self-conscious. What have I done in this time we've talked? What am I doing with my hands? It's like
imagine being married to her.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, are you reading me? What's happening right now?
There's also a way, this is really cool. If you're selling houses, because I know there's a lot of realtors here, but people's eye movement tells you something about their strategies and how they think. So if I were to ask you, hey, Randall, tell me, what was the color of your room when you were a kid? What were the color of the walls?
Look up to the,
you just looked up, right? So he's
you look up into the right.
And if I say, listen, what would it look like if it was blue? And then I should go the opposite way. So when you're recalling information that you remember, you're recalling memories, your eyes will go a certain way. And when you're creating information, your eyes will go a different way. It's up to you when you're watching that person to determine what's the creation and what's the memory based on watching them. But if you're a realtor and you're like, oh man, what house do you live in now? What prompted you to buy it? What did you like about it? Watch their face, watch their eyes, see what makes them light up. And they probably already know this, but then take them to those areas of the house and then ask them, like, how did it feel? How does this house feel compared to that one? Or what do you like better about this house? There's getting them into a feeling state. They're going to have a better experience. And now you've understood them. They feel understood. They feel heard. You've got them. You've got them as a relationship long-term, because now you can influence them and get them what they really want. So it's not really manipulation. It's about extracting information on what they want. And then they're going to love you because you get it for them.
Yeah, I love that. There's an old adage of like facts tell, stories sell. And that's an add-on to that. You get them into the story and the feeling mode rather than the facts. This is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,300 square feet. Da, 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 da. I love that. So if somebody's trying to get better in that realm, what either book or program or anything would you recommend if there is such a thing? Like, how did you start learning about it?
The person that I got certified from, his name is Dr. Matt James at the Empowerment Partnership. He was actually trained by Tony and Richard Bandler and Grindler. Like, he's from the source. Like, the dude owns NLP.com. So just go to NLP.com. That should tell you something. He owns that website and he's the best. He's so good at it. Go to NLP.com. You can go to the Integrative NLP Practitioner course. It's a 4-day course. And if you use the code GENCON, JENCON, all caps, I believe that code will give you 50% off because I'm the alumni.
Because you are Jen. Nice. Okay. We'll throw that all in the show notes as well, just so that it's there and anybody can click through to it. So I appreciate that. It's fascinating to me. Before we started recording, we were just talking about NLP and out-of-body experiences and all of those things. So yeah, it's a bit up there. And obviously Tony Robbins is big into it. So what is the difference then? You mentioned he's doing something else now. What is the difference in the two?
Yeah, so Tony does neuroassociative conditioning, which is just wiring in your body, your central nervous system, your voice, activating all of the elements of you and your body and like conditioning yourself with repetition. And he uses language. So he does, it's like his own thing he created. It's his own methodology. And I've studied him for at least 4 years now. And it's incredible what he does. What he's doing is he's getting it into every fiber of your being. So when he's make a move or say yes, and he's getting you to activate your whole nervous system. So you're learning it, you're moving, by talking, by speaking, by thinking, by doing all of those things. It's really just getting into every fiber of your being and you're shifting your identity.
Do you think that he does that because the 4 different types of people, and so he reaches more people because of that? Okay.
That's exactly why. Exactly why when you're there, you feel like Tony's talking to you and he doesn't even know who you are. Yeah. But you know that, but you're like, no, but that was for me. He meant that for me. And it's awesome. Because he's amazing at meeting everybody in the room. And his words, when you listen to his words, he is hitting every predicate in almost every sentence that comes out of his mouth like a master. And that's why everybody feels like they're the only person in the room when you're at a Tony event and there's 10,000, 14,000 people there. He's just in the zone, dialed in, and he knows how to extract the information and meet you where you are so that you move and take action and show up for yourself.
All right, let's talk then. You guys have a book. You wrote a book. It's all about multifamily. Do you guys want to touch on that a bit?
We have it on Amazon and an ebook. Yeah, it's over there.
Usually behind us.
What are the things? Tell me about the records back there. What's going on back in the back?
That's just the 7-figure CEO from Tribe of Buyers. This is our first $1 million raised for our capital company. We got an award for that.
All right.
And our book is usually right behind it. It's Multifamily Freedom Hacking and the Playbook to Long-Term Cash Flow. And it's on Amazon, but we also have a link for an ebook somewhere that we could probably get you if anybody wants.
Yeah, if you shoot that to me. So another misconception is they are really 2 different companies, the operating company and a capital raising company. And so I've been in some other masterminds and they're linked together in a sense. It's okay, you can be the operator and go raise the capital, and you can, of course. But I have looked at it as these 2 different things. If you're getting into the business and you're simply trying to raise capital, that's all you want to do, then you are capital raising business. You're not going to be the operator and that sort of thing. So there's a whole different set of systems and processes and communication methodology that you should have. So when you guys were establishing the capital company, What were some of the challenges for just setting that up? You'd already been operating for a while. So was it easy? It was an easy transition. Hey, we don't have the deal flow and there are other opportunities. So we're going to raise capital. What was the rationale behind that?
It was easier than most people because we already have a database and we just transferred it over. It was really just about branding and doing those things. And we're at a point right now where we're trying to figure out, do we want to create a fund? And we're in Hunter Thompson's Raise Masters and Capital Collective group to learn about that. We haven't decided yet, so we're still going through that process. That's probably the only piece of friction that we have, but starting the capital company was relatively easy, actually, for us.
Okay, so why would you not consider a fund if you have already done this? I guess what's holding you back?
Jen's gonna be like, Stacy.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm at.
I get it.
The thing is, I'm not sure that the listeners will understand all of the intricacies. So I'll just say this. Managing a fund, there's a lot of administration. Yes. So we have the option when we're coming in with our capital company with capital, we can either go in as a co-GP, which means we're part of the general partnership. We'll have some role in the deal, but our primary role was to bring in the capital relationships. And we own the deal. We have part of the acquisition fee, the disposition fee, like we get a part of all of it. That's the co-GP model. The fund model, it's called special purpose vehicle fund of funds model, which is fairly new to me, is you have all of your investors and like you run your own syndication and people invest with you and then you go invest in the deal. We're told that you end up making the same amount of money doing that. I'm not sure if that's true or not yet. I need to have some number. I have some Friday night spreadsheet business to do with that. But where I'm hung up is if it's going to make the same amount of money, but running a fund requires me to handle all the K1s, all the communication, all the everything, and I'm going to make the same, why would I do all that extra work? So honestly, Randall, that's where I'm hung up. I don't want to do any more. And we've done well being co-GPs. And I think the reason it's becoming so popular and even necessary is a lot of people, when they're starting off raising capital, they don't have a ton of relationships. So if they could raise like $300,000 on their first raise or $500,000, that is so good. That's such a big deal. If they're working with an operator who's raising $7 million and they're going to bring in a whole bunch of people that only raise $500,000 each, they're going to end up having 14 co-GPs. That's not going to hold up with the SEC. The SEC is going to know you're paying them to raise capital, and that's what you're not allowed to do. So I know that the fund model is very helpful for the people who are bringing in smaller amounts, because to be a co-GP when you're really only bringing 10% of the capital, it's hard for it to stand up with the SEC is really where it comes from.
And it's hard for me to argue with her when she can go to one investor and get $270,000 for one deal.
Yeah, because we can raise larger amounts. So we're not in that. So I'm hard pressed to go into a model that's going to create more work, more communication, more dealing with taxes and K1s and investors asking questions about stuff and make the same amount of money.
Jen's side. Let's hear the other side of the argument.
My side is it's who, not how. I do feel that we need to make an educated decision. So I want to see the 96 unit, the 48 unit, the 13 unit, everything like side by side and see how it shakes out in both calculators and then decide, because those are three fundamentally different deals, and then figure out what would it look like. Because I know that it would fall on you for all of that business. I do people. I don't do forms and K1s. I don't know what the hell that is. That sounds like alphabet soup. And so it would fall on you, but it doesn't have to. I feel like we could hire somebody, and I'm sure there are people out there with funds that know how to do that, and they have teams and they have the structure, which is what we're learning from Hunter. So I just feel like we need to dispel some of the myths and just bust them. It's either true or it's false or it's somewhere in the middle, and then decide. And we're almost there. Yeah. She's a freak in the spreadsheet, so she'll go figure it out, and then we'll look at the side by sides and decide.
Okay, so a couple questions then, and just because we've looked at this model as well. One, there's fund administrators. I don't know if they talk about those in Hunter's deal, but they take off the majority of what's going on. How you're structuring your fund, are you charging, or would you? One, obviously, how much you're raising would determine if it makes sense to actually do. There are some guys right now doing $1 million funds, very small, and they're throwing that in as a single LP into a deal. And to me, you're almost double feeing that deal, right? Unless they're doing a straight pass through, which you can do a straight pass through. And then you have some other guys who are actually raising the capital, doing $20 million, $100 million funds and charging a 2% fee, management fee on the money, and then putting that into deals, allocating that capital. So I'd be curious to see which structure or how you guys have thought that side of it through and how much you're looking to raise if you were to do a fund model.
The latter one is the one that I want to do, 50 to 150 mil.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do.
Okay. And are you charging on the equity under management? On a deal, hang on a deal by deal basis, then would you be participating in the actual distributions that are coming out, or your company then becomes the equity management company where you're getting the fee, the 2% on the equity, and you're not taking anything other than maybe on the funds again, the carried interest on the fund?
That is exactly what we need to figure out. That's the whole thing, is which number would be higher.
This is an area that's new to us. So we're still just even learning, what is this?
Yeah.
The way that we're learning about it, the way that we're being taught is not a percentage of the equity necessarily, although they're like, oh, you could do it lots of different ways. But I'd say the way that it's been described to us, which is where I got to go crunch some numbers, is let's say that because we're bringing in a large amount of money, $1 million into a deal where the minimum is 100,000, because we're bringing in a large amount as an LP, that we would get some kind of preferential treatment, a better economics, right? So the idea that from that, the way that they're teaching it is, let's say that the pref is 8% because we're a large investor, but smaller investors would get 7%. What they'd say is, look, we'll pay you, your fund, 8% because your fund is a bigger investor. And you go ahead and pay your investors who are in the fund the 7%, the same thing that they would have got if they came directly to us, except they don't have access to us. We don't have access to them. You're in the middle. So they're teaching, you're basically getting that sliver in the middle.
Yeah, that's
about
definitely
different waterfalls. And there's a lot of complexity, obviously, to it. But
so you're getting almost like a side letter agreement with the operator when they're putting out, because we can get in the weeds in this. I'm just kind of curious. So again, they structure their deal, their PPM comes out and it says, we're doing a 70-30. You guys come in and say, hey, we're a bigger part of the pie. One, you could ask for governance on the deal if you are putting enough money into it, so that if they don't operate the deal properly and you're the largest equity person coming into the deal, you can take it over if they are failing on the deal. So that's one thing. I don't know if you guys have discussed that or not. And then the other side of it is, if you're getting an 8 pref because the way you structured it, you're still going to have to pay your investors whatever your PPM for your fund states. So you, like on a deal by deal basis, you're not going to change that. It's your job to outperform whatever you've told them that you're going to do.
About a fund in the traditional sense, and what we've been learning about is something I'd never heard of. Yeah. It's a fund for a deal. It's not like a fund where people just invest in you and you go find opportunities, which is the whole way I've ever heard of funds until 6 or 7 months ago.
Which is like some hybrid special purpose vehicle fund of funds.
And that's where we're trying to establish. But
okay. We got in the weeds there. It really is fascinating. And it's a new model that you guys are talking about. And I've seen people using that model as well. But if you're going the $50 to $100 million route, you're not going to have that sort of setup. You're going to be taking $5 million, $10 million checks to an individual deal, looking at bigger deals, finding the operator, vetting the operator, and then you again are putting that whole structure into place. So people are investing with you and you are deploying that capital or allocating that capital to the operators. So anyway, again, if you're listening to this, a lot of weeds, go back, listen to a lot of other episodes that I've done on this, because I geeked out on funds. And so we've done one, and I'm happy to talk to you guys about that as well offline. But any other advice that you would give real estate agents who are looking to invest, maybe haven't invested yet, like what would your advice be to them? And then we'll wrap it up with that.
My advice would be get started, because years just go by too dang fast. And then you continue to be like, oh yeah, I should. And now it's 3 years later, 5 years later, even if it's a small amount or a small deal or small something, start, because that will create momentum. Don't stay in a place of, oh yeah, I want to do something with it. Your future self will thank you. That's my biggest advice. Get started, because you're going to learn as you go, and it's going to set you up for your future. You don't want to always be transactional for your whole life. You want at some point to be able to have passive income.
Yeah. I copy.
Love it. All right. It was great to have you both. Jen, Stacy Conkey, crushing it. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your experiences and everything else. It's been awesome conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.